It's sad and unfortunate that two defenseless people who are no longer alive to defend themselves are being, the spotlight is being shown on them without adequate proof. The preliminary report has raised more questions than given us answers. The circumstances of the report, the wordings, the observations, and indirect conclusions are very wishy-washy. 2025, you don't expect India to have done this. I take offense to the fact that the report in the last sentence states that there are no safety recommendations against Boeing or General Electric, and there was no need to have said that unless they knew something more than what they were disclosing, or B, they just had to protect someone.
Boeing and GE, does this mean they essentially have gotten a clean sheet?
They've got get out of jail card. Why has the entire CVR transcript not been released? And that is the most critical aspect, because there is no CVR readout or the DFDR readout. We're not clear whether they actually heard the physical switches going crack and coming down or not. I do not subscribe for a moment that the pilot did it or this suicide theory. The constitution of the committee itself left much to be desired. You did not have a 787 rated pilot. In fact, till yesterday or day before, you didn't even have a pilot. I think we deserved a more professional report and a more transparent report.
The Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau's preliminary report into the Air India crash shows two engine fuel control switches transitioned from run to cut off within seconds of each other soon after takeoff. The report includes just a part of the cockpit voice recorder where one captain has asked the other why did he cut it off, and the other replied saying that he didn't. To discuss these findings and the further questions that they raise, we're joined today by aviation expert Sanjay Lazar. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. What are the questions that the preliminary report raises?
First of all, like I've said before, the preliminary report has raised more questions than given us answers. The first point is, why has the entire CVR transcript not been released? And that is the most critical aspect, because when they released one line, solitary line from the CVR being the cockpit voice recorder, they obviously have an entire recording of the aircraft from the time it pushed back to the time it exploded, unfortunately. Had they given us that in a tabular form, along correlating it with all the incidences that happened, the milestones, it would have made it very clear what actually transpired. Now there's a sense of mystery over this. So that's one. First of all, what happened, with the conversation between the two pilots. Secondly, the sounds of all the oral warnings that would have come on, the master caution light, the warning signals, everything. Thirdly, why was there a 10-second gap between the two engines going off and them restarting? We would have, the cockpit voice recorder would have shown that. The third thing I wanted to raise is, though the report has touched upon the 2018 circular and said Air India did not comply, it's not gone into the other. There are other circulars, the May 22 circular, 2nd May 22 circular, which talks of a danger to, unwarranted shutdown of the fuel pumps. There's also the ANA incident, 787, which also had a similar problem on ground. So there's a lot more that they should have put out that they did not. There's a lot of factual inaccuracy. In fact, they've gone so badly, FADEC, FADEC, they've not even expanded the acronym correctly. They've named it something else. So I think the report was pretty shoddy. Given the situation of our country, given the enormous feelings of the tragedy, and the fact that we are in the top 4 aviation nations on earth today, I think we deserved a more professional report and a more transparent report.
You mentioned how the full cockpit voice recorder transcript has not been released publicly and why that's a problem. I want to understand from you what could be the possible reason for the same, of only releasing one line from the recording.
Before I go forward, I want to just point out, last Tuesday, John Ostrover, who's a very popular aviation geek, and runs the Air Current, which is a online magazine in the United States, had posted all this. Right. He had leaked all this, saying that investigators are looking at this. And it only points to the Americans or, Boeing or GE having leaked it to him. So this was all that came in the newspapers, and that's a good 4 days before India released it. The Wall Street Journal came out with it 3 days before India released it. And that's a very serious breach in the confidentiality of this and the integrity of this investigation. Number one. Number two, what could have transpired? Now, having said that, there was a conversation between two pilots that one said, did you cut off? And the other said, no, I didn't. That gave reason for suspicion or reason for, that warranted the fact that there was some confusion in the cockpit. That one fuel shutoff valve had been cut off. That's very clear because one has asked the other. Or the engines had themselves cut off. We don't know. And that needed some investigation. Number two, once he said, no, I didn't, why did it take 10 seconds to start? You see, all it means is they recycle. It doesn't take 10 seconds. The gap should not be there, the restart. So what happened? There must have been some conversation.
How many seconds does it usually take to restart?
Well, it's if it took 1 second, you see, you've read the report. It says both engines shut down in 1 second. Okay. Now, if you push the switches up, it should take you 1 second back again to switch it on. The respooling of engines may take longer. But over here, they've remarked that it took 10 seconds to recycle. So that's something that, doesn't fit correctly with me. And I also have, great, I take offense to the fact that the report in the last sentence states that, there are no safety recommendations against Boeing or General Electric. And there was no need to have said that unless they knew something more than what they were disclosing. Or B, they just had to protect, someone or, indirectly pass the blame on to someone else. What they've in effect said here without saying so is pilot error or intentional pilot action. They've not said it. They've done it very smartly, but it's very clear what they're trying to say.
I think almost immediately after the report was released, late into Friday night, the narrative has been very clear. The blaming of the pilots has taken a front seat with theories such as suicide and sabotage. And this is, like you mentioned, despite the fact that it does not mention anywhere in the report that the attribution is, to the pilots. It does not say that the controls were moved by the pilots. So what are your observations about this?
So they nicely plant the seed of doubt with the 2018 circular. And then they talk of Air India not having done checks. And then they come to, but the switches were moved and recycled. Okay. So what does that give you to understand? Then the whole world starts surmising these switches could not have been moved automatically. They've been moved physically. Now, there is also the doubt of some software glitch. That's a possibility. There's also the doubt of both, like I said, the 2018, the 22, and the ANA kind of incident where it could shut down the engines. Now, we're not clear because there is no CVR readout or the DFDR readout. We're not clear whether they actually heard the physical switches going correct and coming down or not. Okay. You see, there are two things here. One is the switches could have physically been moved and disengaged, the fuel supply to the engine. The second could have been that without even moving the switch, fuel supply disengaged to the engines through an electronic process. Obviously, these switches are mechanical. They connect to some electronic impulse, which then sends a computerized message to the engine. So both these things are possible. And there is the FADEC controls. There is something that looks into that, which I've covered in my article in detail. But, I didn't want to get too technical on this. Bottom line, unless the CVR is released and unless a second by second tabulation, column of tabulation of what happened, what transpired, because the RAT came on, the RAT came on, and there's so much that the ELT did not deploy. So there are a lot of hanging questions that we need to ask. But by and large, we as Indians are very emotional people. I do not subscribe for a moment that the pilot did it or this suicide theory. But when you look west, every single organization that you see is talking about inadvertent or deliberate, one of the two.
It's not just the Western media, I would say. Several Indian news organizations.
Well, one or two people have said it on Indian TV as well, but I don't subscribe to it, and I'm quite aghast by it. I think more needs to be looked into to see why and how it happened.
But from an investigative point of view, what would be the key components that could help us determine whether the fuel switches were moved deliberately by a human being, or, like you mentioned, it could be a mechanical or electronic malfunction?
Well, Tanishka, first of all, let me just say that the constitution of the committee itself left much to be desired. You did not have a 787 rated pilot. In fact, till yesterday or day before, you didn't even have a pilot. I just saw a notice, which is the appointments committee of the cabinet appointing a squadron leader pilot there yesterday. Okay, or day before. So it means that they've gone a month without that. You've got subject matter experts who are not pilots. And that leaves much to be desired, number one. Number two, what is required to, obviously a thorough analysis of the DFDR and a thorough analysis of the CVR, a correlation of both, minute by minute time and motion study, and also what transpired with the engine. The third thing is they posted video images of CCTV at the airport without timestamps. So we don't know what timestamps and height they are at. A good report would have done that. That's not yet happened. So a lot of loopholes. I mean, in 2025, you don't expect India to have done this. I go back 40 years. When the Tanishka bombing took place, there was a judicial inquiry. We had Justice B.N. Kirpal, who headed the inquiry with the DGCA, with the Civil Aviation Secretary, with somebody from NASA and everywhere. The first thing that they came out with in their preliminary report was the entire cockpit voice recording. And that's 40 years ago, when it was analog. It was not even digital and so advanced like this. I go back to the Air India Express crash. They came out with that. So why are these guys hiding it? Or there was something so shocking that they chose to protect, the public from it. That's the only other thing I can think of, you have to come out in the open, because what this has created is an outrage. And if it's resulted in both the minister as well as the Minister of State for Aviation having to come out and make statements that we are supporting the pilots and the cabin crew, and everything will be dealt with properly. But sometimes these reports take a year to come, sometimes more than a year. So India can't wait a year because there's so much happening. In the meantime, everybody's saying technically we were sound, and Boeing has issued a notice to all airlines, everything is fine with the 787, go and fly it. But this morning you see Etihad and Korean Air sending out notices to all its that please check all 787s for this. I think more and more operators will do that. So it's left a cloud. It's left a cloud, not only over the incident, but over the, unfortunately, the pilots, which I'm very sad about. And it's left a dark cloud over the entire process.
For a layperson, Sanjay, can you just explain the design and positioning of the fuel control switches in a Boeing 787 cockpit? Are they easily accessible, and what's the standard procedure or difficulty involved in moving them from run to cutoff?
So, I mean, if you look at the report, I think it's image 8 or 10 or something like that. They're very accessible from the cockpit position, where the pilot's position or the first officer's position, because you just need to reach down, pull the switch. Now it's a toggle switch. It's a switch that's got a spring, so it's spring loaded, and you pull it up and pull it down into the indent, and then it goes in. So that's how it's operated. It's not easy. You can't just slip, and it's got a guardrail on both sides. So you can't just, accidentally brush your hand and say, oh, my wrist hit it and the engine shut off. Obviously not, because there'll be a catastrophic event every flight. So it's guarded, and it requires, quite some difficult, it's difficult to lift.
You have to unlock it first.
Sorry?
You have to unlock it first, the guard.
You have to lift it and unlock it. There's no guard. You have to unlift and then pull it down. So, that's how it works. Now, the other thing is they find that both happened in 1 second, which I find a little difficult to imagine, because, I've seen so many videos online and Twitter and stuff where people have tried to show it's done in 1 second. And even there, it doesn't happen in 1 second. It takes longer.
I want to go back to the statement that you referred to from the report, which says that there are no safety recommendations for Boeing or General Electric at this stage. Do you think this is premature since a lot of questions remain unanswered and also because the investigation could take at least up to a year? So, from now till then, Boeing and GE, does this mean they essentially have gotten a clean sheet?
They've got get out of jail card. It means that, they may have findings against them later. But in light of what has happened, I can't see them getting anything against them because they are going to continue flying the 1175 787s they have in the world with impunity. It means that there is no question mark over either of them, either the engine or the systems.
Right. And the mention in the report of the US Federation Aviation Administration issuing a special airworthiness information bulletin in December 2018, which, like you said, highlighted that some Boeing 737 fuel control switches were installed with the locking feature disengaged. Since this was only an advisory, we know that Air India did not carry out these inspections. Do you consider this a security lapse?
No, I don't. It was advisory. It was not compulsory. Number one. Number two, Air India replaced the module, the flight control module with the throttle module, 19 and 23. So twice. So it means that what they were flying, and it's a quadrant module, so it has both the throttles plus the switches. So it's not that the switches were old.
Okay.
They were all post that.
Yeah.
Okay. However, like I said, there's the other circular which this committee never even referred to, which is the May 2022 circular, which I refer to in the article I wrote, which says that's for fire, and it says that's mandatory, and it says there that because of FOD, debris that gets collected in the panel, it could result in inadvertent disengaging of the engine fuel supply. It's very clear in that circular. Okay, and that was not referred to. Neither was the ANA incident, because it was an incident on ground. And I think that's where this committee will have to look deeper.
Right.
I do not, like I say again, I do not believe it was an Air India mistake or anything of that sort. I do believe, however, it's a machine. Let's understand that. And if the manufacturer and the regulator of the manufacturer found that there could be some problem with this part, and then secondly, 4 years later says that this could result in inadvertent shutdown of the fuel system, and there is an incident, then it needs a lot more investigation than just a frivolous 30-day thing, and you just say, okay, this is clean sheet. That's where I believe the question mark comes around.
Definitely. But isn't it odd that the reference was made to one of the circulars but not the other?
Unless they didn't dig deep enough, I don't know. And now it's all coming out. Because I've actually, on my Twitter feed, as well as I think partially in the article, even referred to confidential test bed results of GE and Boeing, which actually believe or have stated that there could be technical software issues, okay, in the FADEC with that, which could have triggered this off as well. That's something they'll need months to look at, because it's something very deep. It's not something just superficial.
Right. And like you mentioned, after the crash report, Etihad has ordered checks and issued cautionary directives about fuel switches on its Boeing 787 fleet. Do you think Indian Airlines should be considering doing the same?
Well, there are only two Indian airlines that are operating the 787. Indigo's got few leased aircraft. It's essentially Air India. I think Air India this morning has, their CEO has come out with a statement saying they've already done all the checks post the crash. And, I do believe everybody should stop and take a look. I think all the airlines that are operating this aircraft should take a look at it, because that circular was on record, and see where it is, if there are any issues. And I probably think this will become a very mandatory check very soon for all airlines to, before they pre-flight departure. Having said that, let me be very clear: this switch is used for startup and for shutdown, when aircrafts take pushback or come back. So it's not that it's an unused thing or it's a brand new thing. It's there. So pilots use it every day. So but the circumstances of the report, the wordings, the observations, and indirect conclusions are very wishy-washy and not pleasing, at least for me, wasn't pleasant reading.
The Airline Pilots Association of India has strongly objected to what they call a bias in the report towards pilot error, and they are also mulling legal recourse to have their members as part of the investigation. Do you agree with these concerns?
Absolutely. I've tweeted this 2 days ago. In fact, I've gone so far to say that all the pilots' organizations in the country must get together and file a public interest litigation. I'm very happy to join them because it's essential. Number one, like I said, you have a trained pilot who is 787 qualified. If it was a 777, you need type-rated pilots to look at this, inspect instructors or, somebody who's retired instructor or somebody like that. Number one. Number two, you can't have, a investigation without the subject matter expert of that type. You can't have somebody who doesn't know how to fly tell you what's wrong on your flight. I really, you can have engineers, you can have, aviation specialists, avionics specialists, but you need a pilot to tell you what could have been wrong, what could not have been wrong. That's one. The second thing is a judicial inquiry, which is what I've asked and told people we need, would ensure transparency. Have a sitting judge of the High Court or a retired judge of the High Court and report. Everything will be crystal clear. You will not then have a leak in Washington or Pacific Northwest or the Wall Street Journal 5 days before you come out with a national, apparently or allegedly independent organization, which the AAIB is supposed to be. It's not. If it's autonomous and independent, how are the Americans learning about what's happening here 3 days or 4 days in advance? It's sad and unfortunate that two defenseless people who are no longer alive to defend themselves are being, the spotlight is being shown on them without adequate proof, evidence. If there was evidence, another matter. But you've let ifs and buts ruin their, destroy. Think of their families. Think of the other crew members' families. I've been, in that position on those flights so many years now, close to 4 decades, and I know exactly how they would feel. I've seen up close and personal. I've been, literally almost first responder in two other Air India Express crashes. So I've been very close to, this kind of a situation, and I know how families feel. This is not the time to be doing all this. You either come clean or be very transparent. That's very significant and important. Important because we have so many flights every day in and out of every airport in India and such a huge market. You can't have customer confidence being eroded.
Sanjay, you mentioned the Tanishka blast and how you lost your entire family in the tragic event, I think 40 years ago. Can you briefly tell us how that has shaped your perspective on such issues?
Well, yes, I was a kid when this happened, and I joined Air India. I was still a teenager when I was orphaned. I lost my entire family then in that bombing, and then I was, of course, 17-year-old in a daze when that happened. But it took me a few years, and then I started getting after the investigation and looking into that, and I fought it, and we didn't have anything. We only had Justice Kirpal then, and he came out with his report within 6 months, which was a record time. 40 years ago, he came out with a complete report, and there you had the Canadians not wanting to say it was a bomb, and you had Boeing not wanting to say, there was failure. It was a lot of murky stuff, but it took 15 years to charge somebody. And then I attended all the trial and stuff like that. So it's that event has shaped me as an aviation person and an aviator, or being in the industry. I learned law because of that, so that I could appreciate the evidence and ensure a lot of stuff, of course. And I flew for so many years, 37, 38 years, and God forbid that there should be an error on the part of the whether it's the company or the aviator or whatever. We'll accept it with grace, but there should be clear evidence and clinching evidence.
That's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. I just
Thanks.
want to lastly come to the fact that there's been renewed discussion after the report on installing cockpit video recorders in addition to audio recorders. Do you think this is necessary and will be helpful?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I think it's imminent. There's no question, and I don't believe anybody can stop it happening. Cars have dash cams today. I think it's will be helpful. I also do believe that the design of the DFDR or the EAFR, in this case, what it's called, is likely to change, because we had two on the 787 and both were badly damaged. So I think there's a lot of going back to the drawing board for Boeing and the component manufacturers to see, even in an inferno like this, how to ensure that it stays the course. That's one. Second thing is, if the DFDR and this could not handle it, would a camera handle such a large inferno? The question I'm asking.
Yeah.
Unless you were transmitting directly to the cloud. And I think that's probably going to be the next thing. So they'd have to look at safety, they'd have to look at security, whether somebody can hack it. There's so much, this is a whole new world we're entering, uh, of aviation security, which will be combined with cyber security, because, I can't see a camera lasting such an inferno, 1,000 degrees Celsius heat and stuff like that. When the DFDR and the CVR, they suffered. So, and those are tried and tested machines without lenses. This will have a lens. So lens will melt much faster. So, but I do believe it's imminent. It's imminent. Let's be very clear about it. People need to know, and the public as well as the traveler, and aviation regulators the world around must know. I don't believe pilots are going to object to it. So that's how I see it.
Definitely. And after the crash, there has been a lot of anxiety among people and crew about traveling, about taking flights. And we are also seeing many reports that keep coming up about a crash landing, a technical glitch, an aircraft coming back. What are your observations about the same?
I've received so many calls from friends around. I've been traveling a lot after the crash, the tragedy. I've been, last 40 days, in various other countries. So I've got calls sitting in, when I was in Ireland, when I was in London, when I was in, my kids are traveling on the 787. Is it safe? Should I switch to a triple? And I've told all of them it's absolutely safe. I myself flew a 787 to London and then a 787 to Toronto from there. So, I can vouch for the aircraft. Generally, is one of the safer aircrafts in the skies. Number one, air travel is safe. It's the safest mode of transport we know currently in our world. Uh, Thirdly, there is a loss of confidence, and that's typical in any, you get your house burgled, and this is not to minimize or the tragedy, but you get your house burgled, and then you put in alarms and you put in cameras, and every time the alarm goes off, you run to see if there's somebody at the door or try to protect. That overcautiousness comes in. So you've seen a lot of people being very overcautious, which is good. It's a good thing. It's never a bad thing to be overprotective as far as safety is concerned, and I'm happy that's percolated down. And as far as Air India is concerned, it's a strong brand. 90 plus years. The resilience and courage of the people in Air India will help it bounce back. Aviation will bounce back. We will see better days once again.
I don't know if you agree with me that the Air India management, the Tatas, have a lot of, there are a lot of questions being pointed towards them, and they need to also do their bit to ensure confidence among the crew, among the passengers, and perhaps have a very open communication forum where such anxieties can be discussed and then moved past from.
As far as the forum, they have forums. I know that. I get messages from those forums from friends regularly. There are forums, and they do communicate. There is a low morale. Let's understand, any tragedy brings very low morale. Whether you like it or not, there are people who will not open up to mental issues or nervousness that they feel, and that causes this disconnect.
Yeah.
The Tatas are a very professional organization. Otherwise, they've done very well in every other field. They've done well with Vistara when they ran it. I think it's a matter of time before they, sort that out at Air India. There is, the fear, and there were a lot of people crew who reported sick. There was a lot of turmoil in the month that's gone by, but I think that they're moving up and moving on. Following a major instance, you will always have 3 or 4 or 5 minor instances reported. There is nervousness, and I've seen this. I've done over 20 flights in the last 40 days. Okay. There is a nervousness in the air, and it's not only Air India, it's across the world. This is the first this and the Japan Airlines at Haneda were the first 2 real social media accidents. You saw people making reels, you saw stuff exploding. That was a fireball of an Airbus 350. This was a 787. Both aircrafts had never had accidents before. So obviously this is sent, waves. Aviation is not a very large community, though we have 100 plus airlines. Everybody sort of talks to everybody. There is that camaraderie, and everybody feels a hull loss is a hull loss wherever you go in the world. Everybody feels it very deeply. So it will take time, but it will happen.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I just hope that like you said, the Air India management and the government, actually more than Air India management, the government makes it a very transparent process. The days of the Raj are over. It's very easy for the honorable minister to stand up and say, "Oh, we are supporting you. Nothing will go wrong." All that's let's have a professional, clear, transparent process with communication. Zero communication in 30 days. What do you expect? There's been speculation. I mean, look at today. We are, like I said, in that social media world. There have to be some norms. You've had ridiculous press conferences, ridiculous media appearances, shows on television. I'm guilty because I've participated in many of those. And I find that, one or two people talk very sensibly on those. And then you have two or three guys who just fly off the handle and talk some rubbish. So, that needs to be controlled, and the only way to control that is be transparent with the truth. That's the important thing, and we've not been, and I hope that comes about.